Good afternoon, everyone. As Sonia just introduced, I'm Archita. I'm a UX designer working with Canonical. And before we go into the talk, I wanted to know how many of you are related to design or UX? I shouldn't ask, but how many of you heard of UX or know what it stands for? Amazing. I'm super happy, guys. So today, I want to talk about something that is actually a bit of controversial for a designer to say. That is, you don't need to be a designer to design or to fix UX issues in open source. That is, if you really can't find one for your project. And by the end of the talk, I hope you'll see one. And before we talk about design, let's agree on one thing. I strongly believe that each and every one of you in this room actually care about users, people who use your software, whatever you're building for. And as a UX designer, I work every day with developers, engineering managers, product managers, and I see it again and again, the same thing. Each one of them are genuinely interested and care about how people experience the products they're building. And you care about whether your code runs fast, whether users get things done easily, and whether your feature actually solves a problem. And when someone says thinking about user is actually the UX designer's job, I don't quite believe it, because every good developer I've met already does that very well, just through a different lens. I mean, I think you all actually think like designers, you just maybe call it problem solving. And in a perfect open source world, every project would have a UX designer, a UX researcher, and they're working side by side with the developer. But in reality, most projects don't. You'll often see a long list of UX issues, just one maintainer juggling everything. And it's not that people don't care about design. It's that most open source projects are volunteer driven and developer led. And there simply aren't enough UX designers to support them yet. Hopefully that will change soon. And a good UX shouldn't depend on whether there is a designer available. And if you spend any time in many of the open source forums, you would find a lot of discussions like these, maintainers noticing usability problems, but not having a designer to support them. And these are not rare cases, these are open source realities. And honestly, it shows how much people do care about user experience. They just need a few quick or simple tools to act on it, which made me wonder, what if non-designers could fix UX issues? At least when there is no designer around to support. What if contributors, developers, people who actually are passionate about the project are equipped to fix some of the issues themselves? You know, in Hindi, there is a word, I don't know what is it in Kannada or other languages, but for the kind of clever, creative problem solving, this is a concept in India, we all know. Anyone from the audience? Jugaad, I'm happy, yes, it's Jugaad. And today we'll try to do professional UX Jugaad, applying the same creativity and practicality to improve in UX. But you might ask, why should you believe me saying that you can solve UX? Well, for one, I'm a UX designer, I'm saying it. But most importantly, I wasn't always one. I'm also an engineer. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in engineering. And I actually believed that I'm a better designer today because I started off as an engineer. And let me tell you a little bit of that journey, because it's why I believe so strongly that engineers already have what it takes to solve UX problems. In fact, my journey was supposed to start here at ISC Bangalore with an admit and BSc, but life had other plans. So I pursued my bachelor's at MIT Trichy, where I wasn't entirely sure what kind of engineer I wanted to be. So I treated my 4 years as a big experiment, on more like tiny little experiments. And every semester break was like running a different test case. research at IIT Bombay, an internship at NUS Singapore, and even working on electric vehicles at Mahindra Reva here in Bangalore, if anyone have heard of it. Yeah, I was, each experience gave me data. I learned what excited me, like vehicles, human machine systems, and what didn't. Sorry, power electronics. I was trying to figure out what kind of problems I wanted to solve. And each experience gave me a bit more of clarity. And I realized the problem solving part was the most I enjoyed, irrespective of how I do it. So after graduation, I did what any curious engineer would do. I asked more questions. I wrote an email to a professor in the Netherlands asking, hey, how is technology making vehicles safer for drivers? And how can you help people? His response was simple. He said, come, figure it out yourself. And that's how I ended up with doing my master's in the Netherlands at TU Eindhoven. And that is where I first heard of the word design and got introduced to the idea of design thinking. And that's where I noticed the biggest difference. You see, as engineers, we're trained to fix things. We're solution oriented, and we want to do things fast. But in design, you have to sit with the problem first. As uncomfortable as it can be, you need to understand why it exists in first place, who it affects, and what really needs fixing. So you know for sure that you're solving the right problem in first place. And that small shift changed a lot for me. And it took me to a couple different places, couple different internships, and a 7-year career in the automotive field as a UX designer, working for brands like Lotus. And eventually I found my way into this beautiful open source role, working as a UX designer in Canonical now. And I live in Berlin. And engineering taught me how to solve problems. I love it. But UX taught me to understand who I'm solving them for and why. And when I started practicing UX design, I realized that it's not a completely different skill set as what I was trained for as an engineer. It's just a new way of looking at problems. And engineers debug systems, like all of you. And UX designers debug experiences. Which brings me to the next part, because once I made that connection, I also noticed how misunderstood user experience design is. And one of the biggest, I think the current misconception is UX design equal to Figma designs, which is not. Design actually starts way before you can even open a Figma application. And it starts when you notice that someone couldn't finish a task and they got confused at your README. Another big misconception, and that is UX design is not about making things beautiful. Pretty is nice, but useful is better. The real goal of UX isn't to decorate your interface. It's about making sure people can actually use it without frustration or confusion or give up halfway. And finally, UX design is not fancy frameworks like this one. It isn't some secret, complex process that only trained designers can follow. You probably have seen this. This is the double diamond method. It looks complicated when you try to think about it, but it's really just 4 simple steps. Discover, define, develop, and deliver. You don't need a UX degree to know that. It's exactly how good problem solving works, whether you're writing code or designing interfaces. So now that we know what UX design is not, let's look at what it is and how you can start applying that in your open source projects. UX design is understanding what people are trying to do and improving how they do it. That's it. That's the core of UX design. You just, for simplifying, for the sake of the talk, those are the 2 words you need to remember. Understand, improve. Now let me show in the next parts how to further break down each of these into quick, simple steps that you can take away from the talk and apply. The beginning with trying to understand the problem. And this can be done in a few easy steps. Let's begin at the first one. It's to simply observe. And you might think like, oh, what's going to bring with that? But you need to first observe where people get stuck. And you don't really need fancy user research tools. You just observe someone new trying to use your project, a contributor, a friend, or even a partner who couldn't code. Give them your install instructions and just watch. I know it will be very painful, but it's incredibly educational. You see the pause, scroll back, reread how to do that. But that's where you find your friction points, your UX bugs. And I would suggest also like going through some of the forums and discussions, and you will find multitude of these issues. So start keeping a list of the bugs. And now as a UX designer, I normally spend days or even a few weeks doing proper full-blown user research. But most times when you use open source, things move fast and people contribute when they can, especially in volunteer-driven projects. So we don't always have someone who is dedicated to do UX research. And that's, I think, completely normal right now. It just means that UX methods that work best here are the lightweight ones anyone can run. It's not perfect, but it's practical. And even 10 minutes of observing a user's behavior where they're getting stuck gives you much more insights than 10 hours of guessing what is wrong with the project. And I really like this one. So once you spot the problem, don't jump fixing it yet. Ask why until it hurts. And think of it as like debugging human behavior. And you keep asking why. You keep asking, what is the core issue? Like you can see a lot of obvious symptoms on top, but if you keep digging deep, maybe I would suggest like 3 to 5 times of why. For example, like here, like user failed to set up. Why? They skip step 2. Why? It's buried. Why? Long slide structure. And like maybe that's the point I need to start thinking about fixing it. And it's coming from Toyota's classic 5 whys method. But honestly, if you were that kid like me who just asked too many questions, this is your moment to shine. And the next step is talk to a few users. You don't need a full-blown research study, just a few real conversations. Now, in UX research as a professional, we usually care a lot about things like statistical significance, making sure results are backed by data from dozens of users. But this quick approach here, like, is not about replacing that. It's about noticing pattern. You can start asking just with these 3 questions. What are you trying to do? What was easy? What was hard? When was the last time you felt frustrated? And like you start noticing patterns. And the funny thing is, like once you start speaking with like 5 to 7 people, you would see almost 70 to 80% of your biggest usability issues. And I think fixing that would already improve a lot. And that would give you a huge insight too. I think this is also a really important step. Once you've understood the problem, define it simply but clearly. And this is where I see most people jump straight to solutions like we need a new installer, but that is not a problem statement. That is a fix already. And another quick, easy method for you to remember is this format. A good UX problem statement would try to define who is struggling with what and why. And if you can say that problem statement that you just wrote in one breath, you're focused enough to start designing. And if you're not, you probably need to go back and try to understand it a bit more. Now, the exciting and fun part, actually solving it. And again, start with sketch. Ideas. Don't worry, sketch doesn't mean in any artistic way. I don't think I'm a good artist myself. But you don't need Figma. You don't even need PowerPoint. Just grab a pen and paper, even a napkin, and start putting down your ideas, your proposals, like in boxes, squares, arrows, labels, anything. Like stick figures are welcome too. And you can take a picture of that, like share that idea maybe in the repo, and then we'll start a conversation, and then you can always go back and redo it. But if you want to go a bit further, this is a really cool exercise to do. It's called Crazy Eights. Take an A4 paper or like any paper. It doesn't even have to be white. But fold it into 8 boxes and give yourself 8 minutes to sketch 8 ideas. You would be surprised how creative your brain can get under pressure. And the next one is you need to test your ideas. And testing isn't about polished screens. It's not about high fidelity designs, even at least at this point. It's about validating your thinking, everything, all the crazy eats that you have put down, all the ideation that you have done. A sketch, a flow, a sentence, all of these are testable. You don't need a prototype at this point, and you just need an idea people can react to. And here's, again, another super quick testing method. It's called 1-minute usability test. Give one user one task, 1 minute, and just watch. No hints, no explanations. Where if they pause or hesitate, and that's your UX one. It's fast and light rain and perfect for open source, I think. And even not exactly a couple, like a few of these tests reveal patterns instantly. And you might ask, who is real user? It's not you. It's never, you're not the user of your product when you're building it. But people around you are the lowest friction audience. And look for people who would be a potential user or who is using maybe similar kinds of products, but definitely not someone who know the flow by heart. And you want to match the skill level of the target audience. If your project is for developers, find developers to test it. And if it is for beginners, find beginners to test it. And newbies are your best test users because they see issues and frictions that experts can't. And iteration, keep making small fixes. In UX design, it's not about one big redesign. You start doing with small fixes and running quick tests. It's a simple repeat cycle until the solution feels clear and effortless for your users. Think of it like fixing the bugs. You will know better. Rarely it's holding one commit, right? You need to iterate it. And this is, again, a really important step. You need to document. Document the why. UX improvement shouldn't disappear into commit messages. Add it to your project reviews, design docs, issue notes, anything. It helps others to repeat the process and keeps UX alive when you're involved. You can start putting that down in these simple 3 points, the problem you saw, what you tried, and what you changed. You might even want to add a label like UX improvements or contributors see UX as a part of the project's DNA. And so here's your toolkit. And until now, you might have noticed it doesn't require Figma or Photoshop. You can think of it like debugging, but for people, you find the bug, the friction, trace the cause, fix it, and test it again. And that's UX design in its simplest form. You don't need to be a designer to do it. You just need to be curious to understand and brave enough to improve. So, thank you, everyone.